Hi everyone, we're Journey to the West. I'm V and I'm here with Jay.
Hey, I'm Jay.
And I'm here with Sun.
Hi, I'm Sen.
And I'm here with Wen.
Hi, this is Wen.
And we are here today to talk about our experiences with language and our mother tongue and everything related to identity. Let's open up a conversation. I am Vietnamese speaking. Vietnamese was my first language. And any personal experiences about it? Starting with you, Jay. Did you start out speaking Tagalog?
So English is taught in schools in the Philippines, so my parents didn't really have that language barrier that a lot of other new immigrants would have. So growing up, they would speak to me both in English and in Tagalog, but I would always respond in English, and they never really curbed that habit. And while they did try to teach me certain phrases, key words, I never picked up on how to properly speak the language. So for me, it's this weird place for me. So a lot of my cultural tie to being Filipino is through food and through family, but there's this missing link for me with the language.
And how about you, Sun?
I learnt Vietnamese as a kid. I don't think I learnt English until I started preschool, which is a year before they get you into the school system. So because of that, I think there was this phenomenon with at least bilingual kids that they pick up language a lot slower. And I do remember not being very good at either language. Not necessarily not understanding, but more so speaking. I was a bit of a quiet kid. My parents, they didn't know English, at least for the at least for the formative years of my childhood. So I would have to run around and translate for them a lot, but I'll probably elaborate on that in a bit.
How about you, Wen?
I was actually, I was pretty bilingual when I was younger. So, for my parents, because they always did speak Chinese at home. So, a lot of us, we just picked up speaking it. And also, I guess for them, they always say that it's important. They always say it's important to know it because that's where we, how you say your family line, your ancestors, we all come from that. And I guess for me, it's just that I guess at home, like, technically we are, like, because, how Chinese have different dialects. And we're pretty much at home, mostly we're always hearing two of them. That's not including Mandarin, though, so, because at home, I know I have, like, my dad's always speaking Cantonese, and my mom will speak Hokkien. And the thing was, it's like right now, I can understand most of it, but I actually have a hard time speaking it. Because there's pretty much like no one else to speak it with besides your parents.
Bilingualism is kind of challenging in itself. I originally spoke Vietnamese at home, but then I remember one day my parents talking to me in English, and I didn't understand it until I got older. And my mom said they almost tried to put you in ESL, so we basically tried to make you speak English and all that. But I've always had that natural curiosity to try and go back and learn Vietnamese. That's just my nature. And so I did go back to learn Vietnamese back in like 4th or 5th grade, but it was so difficult even like when you're like 9 or 10 years old because I think you're already used to certain ways of saying things. So going back to learn it is a very difficult task, but I would say if I am better at something, it's probably speaking it, but like not writing or reading. And so in relation to being bilingual, how it relates to like the communities, like I think the Viet community I've experienced, like I have very limited like speaking with them because they're like Viet American like me. We're all just like hang around. If we use Viet, it's kind of like slang in a way. So at least that's my personal experience. But otherwise, I think we're in the middle range. Like not all of us are self-hating, but it's just like some of us find it a lot of work to learn. Not me personally. I'm okay with it, but I don't know. My friends did. Jay, your experiences, how do you think how do they in relation to your community, like have you met any other people who spoke Tagalog like you when you were younger or
Well, I grew up in an enclave, but there were like maybe 2 other Filipinos there. So when we did interact with each other, it was in a group of other people who weren't all Filipinos. So yeah, we never spoke Tagalog with each other when we met. It was always English. Yeah, I have this weird relationship with Tagalog because whenever I interacted with it, it was either through family telling me what to do or saying, kain na, because it's time to eat. Or my parents asking me to transcribe emails for them in Tagalog to friends in the Philippines. But like, I didn't understand what they were saying. I didn't know how stuff was spelled. And I remember asking them, how do you spell this word? And they were just like, oh, just type it the way it sounds. And that was just so weird to me that it seemed like such an afterthought to engage with me in the language in a proper way. So right now I'm actually teaching myself. I have this app called Rosetta Stone for my phone, and whenever I have a break from work, I'm trying to sneak in a lesson and go over it. So I actually know how to spell some things and I know how to construct the grammar. And it's a long process, but hopefully I'll learn enough to feel comfortable speaking.
Sen, what are your experiences like being for your parents' translator and all that?
Well, how I learned Vietnamese was not through actual schooling, because there was a Viet school, but I just didn't go for whatever reason. But my parents were pretty much the fobs, like didn't know English very well. Like I think my dad was a refugee, and he'd been working for a while, and he never had the opportunity to learn English. And my mom just arrived in the country like a few years before I was born, and they lived in an enclave, so they could get by without it. But as I grew older, a lot of the burden of translating and interpreting things were kind of brought down to me. And I usually learnt the language mostly through watching Hong Kong dramas and films that were dubbed in Vietnamese. So if they had like a cop show on or a lawyer show or the seasonal doctor show, I'd watch those and I'd pick up vocabulary. Or if I watched something a little bit more complex like Wuxia, I would be constantly asking what this and that meant, because a lot of the language is depreciated, like people don't use it anymore. But anyway, getting back to interpreting, I can remember a lot of times where I was like 5 and she'd bring me along and I wouldn't be able to do much, but I would help the conversation along a little bit, like especially at the harder parts. Even though I was 5, like it was definitely kind of difficult. And she'd get really frustrated, asking me like, "Why aren't you helping me? I don't know anything. Like, you have to help your mom," and all that. The reason why she actually did that was because she told me that when they have to arrange for an interpreter, it'd be a lot of it'd be a hassle, and not only that, but they'd be very condescending. Like, they treat you like you're an idiot, and they have this kind of mentality that they're like way above you as well. So she really hated that. So she'd rather just struggle through a conversation than have an interpreter there. But I would be with her if she was filling out paperwork, she would hand me the whole thing and then I would have to fill it out. This would be when I'm pretty young too. And then obviously there'd be parts I didn't understand, so I'd hand it back and be like, can you please ask them to do, like, help you out with this, because I don't know what it is. I would go with her on job interviews as well, numerous ones, because I'd be there to help. And they don't usually require English that much because it's usually like menial labor jobs. I would help them find jobs as well online. I would be there at parent-teacher interviews. I do actually remember an incident where I was doing work experience at a primary school, or you guys call it elementary, and I was like just walking around with something, and then this lady who I don't even know asked me, "Are you Vietnamese? Do you speak Vietnamese?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I kind of do." And then she's like, "Okay, the interpreter for today is," she couldn't make it, "so you're going to do the interpreting." I'm like, "What?" And I was like 15 at the time. And my Vietnamese didn't get good until after high school. Like, I still had the foundation and I understood a lot of things. But interpreting is very difficult. It's one thing to translate a phrase or like something, but to interpret something like how a child is doing in a schooling is very difficult. But I'm like, I'm not really sure about this. And she's like, well, you know more than me. And then she drags me to the classroom. And then there's this like really fob lady with her kid. And the kid's really quiet too. The mother, I felt so sorry for her because she was like really concerned about her child not doing well in school. And then the teacher's like, no, she's doing really well. And like, she's very diligent and blah, blah, blah. And I just felt really frustrated at that time because I couldn't really do a good enough job. But at least I helped, right? But at this point, I was pretty used to it because it happens all the time, at least with my family. Because I do have a younger brother, but he doesn't know Vietnamese very well because the burden was always on me to interpret everything. But yeah, anything you can think of with paperwork, like driver's licenses, passports, even a fucking mortgage, like I somehow had a hand in all of that.
So basically you grew up at a very young age because you had to be responsible for all of these adult things for your mom.
Yeah, she did snap at me. Yeah, she would snap at me a lot and be like, you have to help me. Why can't you understand this? I bring it up to her now and I said, remember when I was 8 and you told me to fill out this mortgage like form? And she's like, why did you remember that? And yeah, at the time she didn't understand, but I think she's a little less stressed now. So she's kind of thinking back going, oh, that was kind of dumb. But I want to put a disclaimer. She told me that if you're going to tell this story, you're going to have to tell everyone that she's really good at English right now. She can do everything herself. It's just now she's really lazy. So she still gets me to do everything, but she can hold a very good conversation with people.
I don't think I didn't have to translate for my parents because I think they knew English well enough that they can go to, say, school conferences. Speaking of, I guess the experience of being bilingual was that how it started was like this. It was that my older siblings, they were born in the States, but they didn't speak English. They just grew up. Chinese was their first. I guess Cantonese and Hokkien. That's what they were speaking first. It was when they went to elementary school was that they had to go to ESL because they could not speak English at all. Basically, it's funny thing is they did well. They learned fast, but the problem was that when I came along and I went to the same school they went to, and somehow I got the same kindergarten teacher. The thing was, I was bilingual, so I was speaking both because my older sisters, they can speak English. My parents just spoke their dialects at home, so I was bilingual. Yet they still sent me to ESL anyways. And the funny thing with ESL was that all were Asian people in there. And I remember it was like my neighbor from down the street was in there too. And I was thinking to myself, but you don't even speak Tagalog. What are you even doing in ESL? And I got stuck there for a few years. And even then they still, and I remember my mom would talk, at this conference, she was telling them that I was born in the States. I can speak English also. And they're saying that no, because her and my dad, like, they were not born in the States. So they were telling my parents, don't speak your language at home. And then it's funny, another one, and I got stuck in ESL for a few years, and I got stuck going to speech, which I could never understand why, because I could speak just as well as anyone else. And I could see other people who probably do not speak any other language at home, and yet they probably could go to those speech classes, yet I get sent over there. And I remember my younger brother, when he came along, it's like he can understand what my parents are saying, but he just can't speak at all, yet he still got sent to ESL also. And at the time when, when we were bilingual, you were trying to tell us don't speak it, just learn only English only.
Goodness. So many stories, y'all. My biggest fear about everything lately is a lot of Anglo-dominated countries are trying to export English, and then now everyone wants to speak it from observations here abroad, and it's a sad reality for me to see personally, because I don't see anything special about this language. Psh, No offense, but which leads me to my next point. So my parents were technically, I guess, 1.5. I don't know, because they came here when they were teenagers. But, like, they had some decency and fluency in English. You can still hear their accent when they say words like real and heel and anything with EAL. But otherwise, I don't know. Like, sometimes when they can't understand certain things, I would try to ask them to say it in Viet. And then try to see if I could get the context of it to formulate, like, the words they're trying to say. But it's hard when I don't speak Viet. I've tried to learn for the sake, because I really like when my parents hear me speak Viet, they're pretty happy about it. They think I'm good.
You're actually pretty good, V. Like, we had a conversation in Viet once. Like, you're really good. You're better than most people.
The thing is, I can't like write or read, which I think is kind of like my downfall.
Yeah, me neither.
But the thing is, like, it's
gonna learn it someday.
One of the things that makes Viet unique is that it's kind of like it has a history of like changing. So it's both been Latinized and then at one point it had characters. So it's kind of like when I try to write, it almost feels like a puzzle to me when I like learn to write, because there's so many accent marks. It's almost like it's like a hybrid of even like...
Oh, that shit's like a nightmare to type out. Oh my god.
Yeah, like I'm on my keys and then I have to like type in the accent marks and I'm like, okay, which one's right, which one's wrong? And then so it brings up this greater like disparity to me, which is one of my biggest frustrations being like bilingual, is feeling like I have higher standards for myself to really master and be proficient in my home language, because like I don't want to forget it. And the thing is, this brings up a greater question. Is language the only sole determinant in identity? Like, is who we are defined by our language? Because like I know like some Asian Americans like I've talked to have talked about how like they feel judged because like they're not perfect in their language, and it's like, is that the only thing that is proof that we're Vietnamese enough or Asian enough?
No, I don't think there really should be some kind of universal standard or test to determine how Asian you are. I also think that we're so diverse that it's kind of ridiculous to say this one experience is the real one. That's stupid to me. But building on that, I do think that language can be a very important anchor for culture, and it would be beneficial to anybody who isn't familiar with their ancestral language to reconnect with that and get familiar with that, because it's one of those things that you can not only use to communicate with other people and connect with other people from your own culture, but to pass down to your kids later on. It's one of those things it's free. It's like a legacy that you can carry on, you know?
I agree that the language thing shouldn't be the main marker of, or are you Asian enough or not? It does speak to a kind of wider phenomenon of people valuing English more than their home language. Like, I know a lot of Vietnamese people would remark that it's kind of a quote-unquote useless language to learn. But from my personal experience learning Viet and knowing it well enough I know it well enough to not to interject any English in between, which I think is fairly good considering most people can't do that. But I'm able to talk to people that I don't know. I'm able to connect with a family that back in Vietnam that I haven't talked to like my whole life, but we just have this very familial bond. And like half of that reason is because I can talk to them. I visited family. I've talked to random people on the street in Vietnam. And just being able to talk to them and connect with them is really, I find that one of the most invaluable things about language. And I know a lot of people think it's too late and they can't learn it, but I really think that you're missing out on something really big if you don't. At least for me, I didn't have extended family. I didn't really get to know Viet culture very well. So language was the only thing I had.
It's like I always feel like the language when it's important, because it's just that when you want to talk with your other family members, it's just that closeness. You just, you're in it's just in your own little, like, I guess your own little space right here, because you're able to just speak, maybe just speak freely with each other, and you just never, have to care about I guess what's your around your surroundings as much. I guess for that little short time. And I mean, I feel it just feels nice, and also it just sometimes feels nice when you can just if you can just hearing the language, and it's just nice that if you when you can just understand it. It's just like that, it just feels like you just feel like just familiar with it. And I mean, I feel bad that it's like I cannot speak well anymore. It's like I would probably end up having to speak Chinglish or something like that. It just shows you how bad it is that I just really can't speak. I can understand, I think for the most part, most things. It's just, maybe like just, if it's just like conversation wise, I'm not going to understand, science words or some other ones like those, because my parents don't really use those words either. So, and it's also because I guess it's like just one of those things where I guess talking with your extended family members, it's like, I guess and sometimes when you speak with like your certain dialect with them, it just really brings you that closeness. And I made some nostalgia with it, because I remember, at least I know on one side of my family, don't see them often, and the thing is, but I can't speak the dialect well, but I will still always call them by, say, their title, this title that you call your family members. And I remember one of my uncles was surprised that we still remember that title, because I guess he hasn't heard being called that in so many years, because the rest of my cousins who live in that same area with them, they don't even call them by that title anymore, or they're not even speaking the dialect anymore.
I think if anyone is interested in learning their home language, I think learning your language is very beneficiary, because again, I'm kind of tired of the English worship. But other than that, if you really take the effort, don't just learn to say hi or bye, please. Learn more. Learn how to have a basic conversation. Don't be like that one tourist who's like, "Oh, 教练, 저 cafe su there." And just learn how to say it right. Learn how to say it right.
Everyone learns the cuss words first.
Yeah, we have that.
The funny thing is, I don't know the cuss words. I don't even know the cuss words in any of in Chinese or in any of the dialects. I think once I asked my dad, "What's this word here in this book I borrowed from the library?" It was one of those for the traveling, and I think it had some other words. I asked my dad, "What does this one say, or what does it mean?" He's going, "It's a cuss word. You don't need to know it."
Well, I learned cuss words first because my parents would always swear at me when I was a kid. So.
The funny thing is, I don't know any of the cuss words, but my mom mentioned that, "Oh, your family, they all cuss. You just didn't realize it." Oh,
please, enough with the cuss words. And yeah.
At least learn the food, guys. It's really easy, because I don't actually know any of the Viet dishes in English, so I have to order in Viet when I go out.
Know the good stuff. That concludes our pod. I'm V. You can find me on my social media networks at NoCaps Miss V Nguyen. And Jay?
I'm Jay. You can find me at J_MARAAN on Twitter.
And Sen?
Thanks for listening, guys. I'm Sen. You can find me on Twitter at Sen_Tient. Sentient.
And Wen?
And I'm Wen, and I am not on any social media.
We're Journey to the West. Bye.